Hi, everyone, and welcome back to From Mourning to Light number 2. And I'm your host, Sadie Bale. And today we have a very different topic. I don't think we've ever had this topic before, and that's really strange because it's very pertinent to grief. So it is my absolute honor to introduce Dr. Joshua Black. He has his degrees in psychology and he is a grief researcher, he is a speaker, and he's a consultant. And he also hosts the Grief Dreams podcast. So, no prizes for what we're going to talk about today. All right, Joshua, welcome to the event.
Well, thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. I'm really excited to talk about this subject. Okay, well, let's start right at the beginning, Joshua. You must have had a dream about someone you love very much. So tell us a little bit about what happened to lead you into this very interesting research.
It's very interesting how I even got here. It's not something that I pre-planned when I was in school. It was something that more or less happened just by, I guess you'd say, following your heart. And this is where I am right now. And so, but it all started like when I was in university and I was wanting to be an elementary school teacher. And
Oh,
within my final kind of year in school, my father died.
mm,
And at that time, I was just trying to rebuild a relationship with him because it was, a very toxic environment growing up. And then my mom and him separated. And then so I was just trying to learn more of who he was. And at that time, he was opening up a little bit more to me. And so I was really feeling a bond there. And so within about a year or two, when we really started to get close, that's when he actually died. And it was very sudden. And it was the first time for me I've ever experienced a significant death. And so I didn't know how to process it. I never really talked to people about their own losses at that time. And so it really pulled me down in many ways. So at first I was just crying and I couldn't stop. It was just for someone who didn't cry for like probably 20 years to just like have like uncontrollable tears, it was very scary for me. And my whole goal at that point was to stop crying and get back to school and finish up and go back to work. And so after the funeral, lo and behold, I was able to stop crying, which was a great, it was great for me. But I didn't understand the impact of that on the rest of your grief experience. And so what happened was, I stopped crying, but I also felt like dead inside. Like the world went from colorful to like black and white. And I
mm,
just thought this is just how it is. I'm just going back to work. So you just do what you can do. I
mm,
wasn't talking about it with anyone. And
mm,
so my whole life could have been that for the rest of my grief journey if I didn't have this dream that happened. And it wasn't that I was asking for one, it just happened. And it completely changed me. And so the dream was I was in my room and I could see my father at the other end, and he looked healthy, he looked light, he looked happy. And as I was saying, like he every time I've seen him, he was always heavy in I don't know, energy, or just like he had the trauma. So you just tell there's this heaviness that he carried around with him, like these weights. And in the dream, he didn't have those on him per se.
mm,
And so I walked up to him and I told him that I was going to miss him. So acknowledging his death. And then I told him that I loved him, and we hugged, and I woke up. And when I woke up, the color came back right away. It was the craziest experience I still to this day have really ever had, because I remember just sitting at the edge of my bed thinking, what was that? And how am I feeling? Like good. Like I was feeling really good, as much as like, yes, I still, miss my dad, but I wasn't, I was feel the color came back. And so for me, it was just, I was sitting in this mystery of what just happened. And still to this day, I don't know what happened, but I know that it helped me in my journey, where other people, they may still have never had one of those experiences, or maybe they have. And that's why they're more in their certain path that they're on now.
mm.
So for me, I had that experience. I went back to school, got my A's, and that was it. I didn't really talk about it with anyone. It was my own personal experience. And then when I went to become an elementary school teacher, something in me just told me this wasn't the right idea.
Mm.
And so I decided not to pursue that anymore. And I
Mm.
didn't really have a plan B. So I'm just trying to figure out what can I do to have meaning in my life. And you get some jobs here and there, and nothing was fulfilling. And I decided to volunteer with a local hospice where I was situated at that time, and they had a
Mhm.
bereavement program. And so I really focused my time there. And so I was talking to people in one-on-one and also in group, and they kept bringing up these dreams. They had all these questions about dreams that, like, for me, like, no one ever had any questions about this. So I just thought, like, I had my own personal, experience,
Mhm.
and that was it. Like, no one ever asked anyone about theirs. And then all these people just kept talking about it. And a lot
Wow.
of the questions hindered their process of their own grief. And so it's
Mm.
like, why am I not having a dream? Does it mean does it mean if they're spiritual that they didn't cross over, or that maybe they're mad at me for having to sell the house or something like that? So there's always like this negative connotation on why they weren't having it. Other people were having these negative dreams and they want to know why they're having negative dreams. And then other people are just having very beautiful dreams and positive dreams that were actually transformative for them, like it was mine. And so,
Mm.
anyways, when I went to the research to try to understand this a little bit more, there just wasn't anything there to be able to provide them.
Mm.
And at that time, I was like, I wonder if I could do something to help them, because I found it very interesting too. And
Mm.
so it took me a little while to gain the courage to want to pursue being a researcher, because it's not something I was trained to do. So it's a huge learning curve. And but at the end of the day, like, I was able to find someone to be able to um, help me with this research when I did my master's.
Mhm.
There's someone that took me on and said, yes, this is a very interesting topic. And then in my PhD, someone else was able to take me on. And the interesting thing about that is people don't know, you can't just do research. Like,
Mm.
usually your supervisor has to be an expert in that area. And then you
Yeah.
just like really add on and your own unique flair to it
Yeah.
as you sort of make your research. Neither of these people, supervisors, were experts in this area because it hasn't really been researched. So they took a huge risk, and lo and behold, they both had their own dreams of the deceased that they found was interesting to them. And so
Oh.
that's why they brought me in. And for the PhD, my supervisor was also retiring, so she could really do whatever she wanted. So it's that's what I'm saying. Like, the doors opened up just at the right time for me to actually pursue this type of research, because there's no one currently researching this topic. And so it's just been a blessing for me to be
Mm.
able to be a part of that. And then when I was actually a part of this, that's when I really learned more about this topic than I ever had before. And
Mm.
now it's just about raising awareness. I find that a very joyful aspect of my life to be able to have this part of my meaning making after sort of the death of my dad, but also to help other people try to work and figure out how to, like, walk in this path of grief after a death.
Yeah. Wow, that's an incredible story.
It's
It sounds like all the stars just aligned and every step you took was just helping you more and more to do this research.
it was, and that's why I look at it, and I'm in awe just on the events that things happen. And to even put a cherry on top, so my PhD supervisor, it was interesting. I was a TA for her Psych 1F90 class when my dad died. And so
Mhm.
there's just that connection there where she was actually, part of my grieving process because I was working for her at the time.
Wow.
And she was very supportive in that way. And at the end of the day, it's like, and I didn't have any idea that that's who I was going to actually do my PhD with. And so, like, she was so helpful to getting this and supporting my journey to, like I said, like, raising awareness. And I was really trying to do that as I was in my PhD, which is a little different for most people in my cohort. Their goal was to sort of be a prof or to get the research done and do as many research papers as they could. My
Mm.
goal was trying to do something that was meaningful and then be able to share it. And so I was trying to do that as best I could, and hence the podcast and all the other talks I've done, really trying
Mm.
to get the information out because I know people all over the world are having questions about this topic.
Mm. That's true. And so Dr. Joshua Black, not many doctors are running podcasts. That's true.
No,
Academics are doing the academic stuff, and the
yeah.
other people are doing the podcast. But here you are. And do you
I'm
enjoy
switching the
the
script. Yeah, I'm switching the script.
do you enjoy doing the podcasts,
I
Joshua?
do. One of the reasons for it was when you do research, it's great. A lot of times you can collect some, qualitative statements from people. But a lot of times people value more of those quantitative than numbers. But it really doesn't, it takes away from the story. And so the podcast is really about someone's journey through grief and then how these dreams have impacted them in that process. And you don't really get the fullness and the vastness of that experience through research per se, that
Mm,
you can just by hearing someone's story. And if it was a
mm,
negative dream, what happened and how they work with that. If it's a very positive dream like mine, you see how it was transformative to them. And you can see it even in pop culture. These dreams are embedded in our culture, but yet we don't really know much about them. And so what
mm,
it tells me in many ways is these dreams have been impacting people so much that they've put them in movies, TV shows, even the
mm,
music they've written is
mm,
really incorporates that.
mm,
Like one example is Paul McCartney from the Beatles, who wrote Let It Be. That was
mhm.
actually based on a grief dream he had of his mother after she died. And so he was having a
Oh,
very difficult time in that moment in his life. And then his mother in the dream, Monis came to him and said, it's going to be okay, just let it be. And then when he woke up, he just felt this peace about him. And he also thought, oh, I've never heard that said before. And so he wrote a tune to basically make that experience in a song. And his mother's name was Mary. So I always thought it was a religious reference, but it's actually a play on
yes.
words because his mother was named Mary. So you really see like people are incorporating these, and it's such a significant part in people's grief journey. And so when people look at others, they say, oh, they're so resilient, like how amazing. And people are, but we're
Mm,
not incorporating how these dreams can actually help us get there. And a lot of time, these dreams are very positive, very loving, and you see them
mm,
across culture. So this is a human experience. This isn't because someone believes in the afterlife, they get these dreams. It's a human experience. And people who are atheists or just don't believe, they still get the dreams. Like, so it's a very beautiful statement that there is something within us that is trying to help us along the way.
oh, I love that. I love that song by the Beatles, and I didn't
Oh,
think it was religious, but now it makes perfect sense. It's
hmm.
incredible. Wow.
It is. That's when you start looking and you start realizing a lot of my favorite movies had a lot of these dreams. Like Braveheart was one of my favorite movies and my dad's growing up. And only
Mm,
after the fact, I look back and I watched the movie. I'm like, whoa, there's like three dreams of William Wallace's deceased wife in this thing. I'm like, that's so crazy. Like for me, I'm just like, I never, if someone would have asked me, talk about this movie, I never would have brought that in. But
mm,
those dreams were such a significant role within that movie. And it's
mm,
only after I started researching it that I did it actually come up in, I guess, my consciousness that this is actually something significant. And I think that's just life, right? Until someone points something out sometimes, or before you, or if someone finds something valuable, then you start seeing it everywhere. And you're like, wait a second, it's always been here. It's just we never took it seriously, or no one told me to take it seriously.
mm. You said such an interesting thing, Joshua. You said that across all cultures, across all religions, people have these dreams.
Yeah.
And in your dream, did it feel like your dad had come to visit you? Because I know from my own grief dreams, they feel so real.
It felt completely real. I don't know
Yeah.
like what I didn't say, oh, like how's heaven or anything. I was just like, I miss you. It's just like you're in a moment, and in a lot of dreams, it feels real in the time. And then you
Mm,
wake up. And so for me, what I learned from that experience was that it was the dream that helped me. It wasn't any interpretation I put on it.
mm,
Like when I woke up, I didn't say, oh, this was a visitation from my dad. He must be okay. Like that was never a concern.
mm,
That
mm,
wasn't part of that. And so it was just the dream itself changed me. I think that's the more important thing. Like you're in this moment in time that has a healing potential within us. And
mm,
wherever it comes from, it's from inside or it's, from the afterlife and it's the real soul, how
mm,
beautiful that is. But we'll never be able to know. And it's really based on people's interpretations of it. And it said like these dreams tend to be different too. Like, so it said like they tend to be more real. They tend to sort of have this peace and love within them that a lot of our other dreams don't, which is a shame because I love that feeling.
mm,
So yeah, there's something special about these, and the research is really pointing to that. There is something unique here, What
Mm.
it is, it's still up in the air, and that's really for people to put their own beliefs and understanding on.
So, is there a way people could invoke a dream? Or
Some yeah, like that's the $1 million question, because if you can figure that one out, you got yourself a business. There's no pill or anything anyone can take. There's no like scent. So there's some people have talked about different ways that they found that have helped. Some people said they've prayed and they had a dream. Other people said they prayed and they haven't had a dream, right? So it's very mysterious this time. There is something called dream incubation that I still need
Mhm,
to look at more on, if you can incubate these dreams a little bit within our waking life.
mhm,
But it's not been tested yet. But one would think that if someone thought about a dream that they would want to have before bed, that maybe aspects of that dream can come within our own imagery. And so I do have an exercise on my website that's free if someone wanted to do it, but it helps us actually build a dream that we want to have. And so if you think about that dream before bed, it may actually help you remember that type of dream. But it's still, I haven't tested it out yet, but other research with dream incubation, there's been some significant findings on our intentions before bed and what kind of dreams we want to have.
That's very interesting. I'm going to take a look at that resource. And I encourage everyone in the audience to have a look. That sounds, yeah, sounds like something I'd want to do. And then can you talk a little bit about the common themes? I mean, you've done research. Are there certain things that keep popping up that you've noticed?
Yeah, there's a lot of themes I could talk about, because they change a lot too based on the relationship and the type of loss. But in general, what we can sort of see throughout all different types of losses is that you can have these very negative dreams. So
Mm,
some of the negativity will come from the individual being dead, dying, or ill within the imagery itself. Other times,
mhm,
it's the deceased is basically criticizing or threatening to harm the individual. So those are the two major negative ones. The more positive ones is deceased being healthy and happy. A lot of times people are just witnessing them. It's not really they're talking, but they're witnessing them. Other times it's the deceased is basically trying to offer comfort in many ways, either asking for forgiveness if they've harmed the individual, providing forgiveness, providing understanding, providing love,
mm,
comfort and advice to work through their grief is a big part. But I think love's the key to all of it, which is the most beautiful thing that you see across cultures. Is this huge amount of love that people like will speak about, and that's what happened with me. With there's something about, I think, working through some of the blocks I had, which was about saying goodbye, and because I didn't get a chance to say that, and also for telling my dad I loved him. The last time I did that was when I was a child, like 25 years ago. Like, he
mm.
never said to me, I never said to him. It was just a guy thing. But I didn't really understand how much I probably needed to say that. That's why I said it within the dream.
Mm,
So I think those two blocks were key, but I think the environment of the dream was even more significant, because you see that across cultures, and you feel that maybe there's something really powerful about being in that state in the sense of the healing potential. And I
mm,
think that's what we try to get to when it comes to meditation. But I don't know if we ever get to that type of love and peace.
mm,
But there's something I think very beautiful about that. So those are the more common themes. And it's like, if you have a parent die, maybe they're elderly, you may have a dream of them when they're younger and healthier, so maybe like 30, 40 years old. If you have a child die at, let's say, age 2, they can grow up as they would have. So if they're 2, now they're 4, and in 2 years they're at 6 that you're dreaming about them.
mm,
So if it was a partner that died, some people will get encouragement to date, or if they're trying to remarry, they'll have that. Sometimes they'll have like the romantic encounter dreams in that category too. With
mm,
pet loss, there's a lot of playing going on there. A
mm.
lot of it looks like routine. I've only seen 2 dreams where dogs have talked to their owners, but
Wow.
yeah, which is kind of cool. And both times, strangely enough, they're basically encouraging them that it was okay to get another dog. So that's one of the conflicts that people
Oh.
who have a pet loss deal with, is like, is this time? Am I trying to just replace my other companion with a new one? And
Mm,
so, there is some conflict in knowing, is this the right decision at this time? And so these dreams can help people with that. And so I can go on, like after miscarriages, people can dream of the child. in
Mhm.
different ways. So it could be as a baby, it could be as a child saying I love you, even could be as a teenager saying, once again, it wasn't your fault. So
Mm.
offering advice to to either parent, that it wasn't their fault. There's nothing they could have done, and that's one of those things that people go through if they do have a miscarriage.
Mm.
That like, did I do something wrong? And they could put
Mm.
guilt on and blame on themselves. And these dreams really help release that, which is, grief is hard enough, and then when you add on the guilt and blame, it's even more difficult. So I love how these dreams can really release that in many ways for us to then feel and work through the next stage that we're going through.
Yeah. You're right. There's a lot of beating yourself up when someone dies. I know people feel they could have done more, they should have noticed, they should have done something sooner, especially when someone gets ill suddenly and everyone thinks it's okay until it isn't anymore. Um, there's also accidents. My husband passed in an accident and I didn't run over and do CPR. I mean, my brain
Mhm.
just fled and I went into
Yeah,
shock, and CPR was the furthest thing from my mind. And so I, yeah, well, beat myself up about that a bit. So there are all kinds of scenarios where people feel guilty.
yeah,
They could have said something, they could have done something.
right.
They didn't say I love you. They didn't say goodbye. They had an opportunity to do something and it passed them by. So I think if a dream comes to them, then they can trust the dream. Is that right, Joshua?
Well, there's a lot of dreams I've seen. And so I think it's really based our interpretation to really be diligent and use discernment when we make those, because there is another category I didn't speak of, it's more rare. And it tends to, I found in my own research, and you find across cultures, that there's a significant a warning flag to those dreams. So sometimes people have a dream of deceased trying to convince them to basically kill themselves, that it's the only way for them to be together again. And
Ooh.
so these can be very negative, where the deceased is either dragging them to the afterlife. Other times it's a very kind of like sweet dream where they're just saying, this is the only way us to be together. You should do this. And like, this is when we're going to be loving again. And so you have all this sort of stuff. So it's a warning flag in many reasons, because just by looking at it in different angles, but the person may be having depression or suicide ideation as it is, and they may use these dreams as a way to say, oh, it's them, it's a visitation, and then they go. And so I think it's just important that we don't see every dream as a visitation, or that we act on the words that are going on, but understand how it
Mm.
feels and to think about it, and like, does this reflect maybe my grief, or this is reflecting a little bit something else? And
Mm.
that's why it takes time to really understand your own dream language. But a lot of times we want to rush to an interpretation. But if it's a loving feeling, I think you can just sit with that love and see how that changes us as we move forward. And if you have friends that are able to hold a space for you, that's great. A lot of people don't, unfortunately. So when they do share these dreams, they, may be told something they didn't want to hear. Other times they're afraid because maybe their family members didn't have a dream. And so they're really cautious. A lot of people are cautious in sharing these experiences because
Mm.
they don't want people to become jealous and all that sort of stuff. It's a very positive dream. Or if it's
Oh.
a negative dream, they want people to criticize them, or feel that they're not doing okay, or well enough. A lot of
Mm.
times we try to, like I said, hide our grief from other people in the world. And so these dreams can also be a window to how we're actually truly dealing with the the death and our own grief. And you sort of see there's a lot of these negative dreams, as I just sort of said, with the dragging or trying to convince someone to die. Um,
Mm.
More rare, but it's there. But other dreams, there are a lot of those negative dreams, and they're really reflective in many cases of our way of processing our grief and different challenges that we're going through. Like, I had a very positive dream of um, you
Mm.
know of my dad, but a lot of people don't.
Mm.
And like, one dream I had, there was a person that it was a widow, and her husband came back into the picture and like knocked on the door and basically said, I want to be back together with you. And she's like, I can't, I'm dating someone new. And then he's like, well, if you're not going to be together with me, I want all the money that you inherited. And then she's like, why are you such a mean and terrible heartless person to do something like that to me? And then he started chasing her. And so she woke up, she had this as, a very repetitive dream. And she thought it was a visitation. She thought that that was her deceased husband that was, coming back and basically haunting her in
Mm.
its own way. And, after sort of discussion, you sort of see some of the main issues within the dream that she's probably working through in waking life. And the first one is she started dating. And so there's that dating piece within the dream and how hard that is. Like, I've never had a death of a spouse, but I can only imagine how difficult that is, because you do tend to, depending how quickly you are trying to date, you may shed the person from your grief. You may take down pictures or take down their clothes sooner than you want to within your house. There's a lot of different things that can go on. They may not be as supportive, or you may think that you need to be a certain way. So there's a lot of conflicts that are going on. Then you have to love two people at the same time, which, our culture is not the best for. And so you have all that. And then you also look at, he's asking about this money. And so when you ask her, what's going on with this money, she said that was the hardest thing for her in her grief, that she's still trying to deal with, that she feels it was unjust, that she's the one that gets to utilize the money when he works so hard. So you can
Oh.
sort of see that those two factors are just combining within the dream to make something. I
Mm.
will sort of stipulate that every culture will have their own interpretation of positive and negative dreams, and their interpretation, even of very positive dreams, could be negative to them. And so it's really understanding how the person is feeling, and when they wake up from the dream, their own beliefs around it, and try to work with that. And I think
Mm.
with those negative dreams, there is a lot of research when it comes to trauma and other aspects of life, how our waking life does reflect, many dreams that are negative. And
Mm.
so that is always an option, but I always sort of say to work with the individual's cultural beliefs, because they're there for a reason. And if that's something that they do believe, there are ways that they've worked with negative dreams in the past. But to
Mm.
always have that on your back burner, that this also could be part of someone's a story of someone's waking life that maybe they're not seeing.
Mm. Well, that's very wise, Joshua. Thank you for that advice. So have discernment. And
Yes.
then I believe there's a place on Facebook. People can go and read other people's dreams, and they can put their dreams. How would they find that, Joshua?
There is. So that was just an opportunity for people to be able to talk about these in a safer space and what they're maybe sometimes they have available to them. So yeah, it's just on Facebook. You type in grief dreams and the group should pop up. If you want to read more dreams, you can also go on the Instagram account at Grief Dreams,
Mhm.
which is, I post a bunch of dreams that people have had. And a lot of them are very positive. And I just want to sort of say it's more common to actually have very positive dreams. That's what's unique about this, that you don't see in any other trauma or any other occurrence in life. And so there's something very beautiful going on here. We just don't know exactly what it is, but it doesn't mean we can't embrace the beauty of it.
Mm. That's lovely. Well said, Joshua. And then I think for our final question, Joshua, is there anything, any advice or any wisdom you have for the audience about the dreams, or, the floor's open, whatever you'd like to talk about?
The, there's a lot of things you can say. I've learned a lot from other people's dreams, and I think we all can. We don't need our own dream to learn something about ourselves. We can actually utilize other people's dreams, because there's great wisdom in the dreams people do have, and especially with what the deceased says within the dreams. I found them very, very powerful words and very short and sweet. Um, but also there's the love. And I think when I look at why is love so prominent in these dreams,
Mm.
and what is that about? And I think that when I look back at how it reflects waking life, I think one of the aspects of grief that we don't really talk about is the impact to our own self and how we view ourselves. And a lot of times, those people who do die give us confidence that we're lovable, and they give us the confidence to be able to wake up and smile when we see ourselves in the mirror. And when they die, that can feel like it goes away. And so we're left in the mirror with our own beliefs, our own thoughts about who we are. And I think that what these dreams will help is that you actually, and a part of you does love you. And those moments that I think we have, I think it brings back the truth that you've always loved yourself. It's just, you just need sometimes you need other people to tell you that for you to believe it. And I think these dreams maybe help us a little bit believe that the love's still there with and how we see ourselves, and
Mm.
with the other person that has died. It's still occurring and still going on.
Mm.
But I sort of see that transformation in both angles. And I think a lot of times we forget that, because you see with pets too. Like the
Mm.
pets never, like they give us that warmth and they give us that comfort to feel
Mm.
that, we're loved. And, people are having dreams about animals just snuggling with them and just on their lap watching TV. And like, you don't get these grand moments and these grand, like you can do anything in a dream, but what's going on in the dream is really people, or pets, or whoever
Mm.
together, just being together. And it's
Mm.
like, what's so important about that? And you sort of realize, oh, like that's probably when people feel the best about life, is in those moments, the
Mm.
simple things. And so, yeah, that's one of those things I've learned, through that. And so I keep looking and focusing on self-love for myself, and to realize, yeah, there's some things we can't change in life. Like we can't bring them back from the dead. But what we can do is continuing to work on the parts of ourselves that they loved, and for us to see ourselves like they saw us, so we can move forward with a greater sense of love in how we see ourselves, even though we can still grieve the individual that has died.
Mm. That is beautifully said, Joshua. Thank you. Thank you so much for giving us your time, your valuable time. I really appreciate it. And discussing this fascinating subject of dreams. Um, all right, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us on this episode. Thank you, Joshua.
Thank you so much. I just want to add at the end, if people want more information, they can visit my website, griefdreams.ca, because there's a lot of information we didn't talk about, but I appreciate you raising awareness on this topic.
Oh, just another note, it'll be on the email. So when you receive this video email, just look out for that website address. It's there if you don't remember it. Okay. Thank you, Joshua. Bye.
Bye.